Steve, and you're watching my show, SmallCapSteve Live. We got Bruce Linton coming on today. That's going to be pretty exciting. I'm actually really excited to talk to Bruce. He is a very engaging talker. I want to get into some of those early days at Canopy, going around collecting those checks to raise money on what probably sounded like an insane idea that ended up, turning into a multi-billion-dollar company. We're going to go over the news first. The big happenings in the small cap world. We got some gold news that came out. Control Technologies, KNR. They got a $2 million investment from, I believe, the Ontario government. We're going to get into that. Plant & Co. They just appointed Donna Reddy from Holy Crap, I believe, as the new president. Pharmathere had some news. And I'm getting yelled at by my team here. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It's how we feed our kids, is when you hit that like button and you hit that subscribe button. So buckle up, get ready. We got a big show. Let's get it started. Jason.
Good morning.
How do you do?
Oh, it's been a day. The news has been kind of relentless this morning, actually. I've been on conference calls writing stories. I've been doing all kinds of things while writing stories. It's getting ridiculous over here in small cap.
I've got a big reveal for you guys. I'm wearing makeup. Look at this. I shaved. You ever shave and get like red crap all over your neck? Happened to me. I was like, okay, no one wants to look at that. So I grabbed,
you make your wife put on makeup for you, or what?
No, my wife is she took my little girl to the doctor's this morning. So this is all me. This is all me.
Some things you keep to yourself.
I've started. Actually, my wife cut my hair. It's actually looking okay. She has no background in cutting hair. Just watch a YouTube video. It's like the third or fourth time since COVID started, and I'm a little bit nervous that now this is going to be a thing. When I lived in Toronto, I went to this old timey barber shop where there was like old Italian men and pinstripe suits, and there was Playboy magazines, and they'd offer you a coffee and say, "Do you want some, a little kicker in your coffee?" And now it's like, oh, it's just going to be my wife cutting my hair in the kitchen.
In the suburbs.
I know that it'll, as soon as COVID ends, we're going to end up at a Magic Cuts or whatever one of those chains are that we have.
Yeah, that's effectively what I use. I'm too cheap to go elsewhere.
Oh, you cheap? I can't believe
How
that.
surprising. You can't even believe it, right?
Yeah.
Me cheap? No.
The guy who chooses to write 12 articles every morning because he's too cheap to hire more writers.
It's a mix of cheapness and the time to train. So if someone out there is well-versed, please lend me a hand. Send in your resume. I'm always open. Always open. Not an understatement. But yeah, let's get into it, Steve.
Let's get going. What's big in the news today? The first thing I want to talk about here is Hindenburg attacks Chamath.
I thought it was Chamath.
Chamath. I don't know. I was just reading it. Like Chamath. I think you're probably right. I'm going to take your. I just took a crack at it. It's one of those names I always read. I probably read his name like 30 times a day, and I don't know. I never hear anybody say it out loud. So Chamath, they've attacked Chamath. Clover Health short report. Did you get a chance to take a look at this?
I looked at the Twitter. I didn't get the chance to read the report, unfortunately. I'm a huge fan of Hindenburg. I'll be upfront about it. I mean, I think Nate does amazing work over there.
It's a great writer.
And I mean, his last one, Nicola, great work on that. So at this one here, he's going after Clover Health, which is a SPAC that Chamath had and now vended in this asset. Allegedly, the company's under a bunch of investigations by the Department of Justice related to upcoding, I believe it was. as well as Chamath has reportedly he put in $25,000 and now his investment's worth $290 million because that's effectively what cheap shares do, right? On top of that, he took aim at Chamath's image of being the retail leader when he's actually worth $1 billion. He basically said, this guy's just taking advantage of you. Again, I'm just repeating what Hindenburg said. I'm not making any opinions of my own on this, to be clear. But he went after it, and from what I could see, it looked solid. Now, I will note, Hindenburg was extremely clear in his disclosure that he is not short nor long. This was largely done as a result of the attack that's been on short sellers, and Nate effectively wants to just prove the good work that short sellers do in the marketplace, and not necessarily profit from this, but effectively point out why they're needed within the market.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack here. Let's just read through the tweets quickly here that Nate put out. I assume that Nate runs the Hindenburg research. News from U.S. Clover Health: how the king of SPACs lured retail investors into a broken business facing an active, undisclosed DOJ investigation. Today, we reveal how Clover Health and its Wall Street celebrity promoter, Chamath, whatever his last name is, misled investors about critical aspects of Clover's business in the run-up to the company's SPAC go public transaction last month. Here's a quote from Chamath. Clover has been diligenced and validated not just by me and my team at Social Capital, but by some of the most respected blue chip technology investors in the world. They go on to say, our investigation in Clover Health has spanned 4 months and more than a dozen interviews with former employees, competitors, and experts, dozens of calls to doctors' offices, and a review of thousands of pages of government reports, insurance filings, regulatory filings, and marketing materials. Clove has not disclosed that its business and its software, called Clover Assistant, are under investigation by the DOJ, which is investigating at least 12 issues from kickbacks to marketing practices, according to a civil investigative demand we obtained. So we can see it here.
So yeah, I mean, we don't gotta read through the whole thing. It's quite long. I don't know if you.
I grabbed a coffee this morning and I read like half the report.
Oh really?
I still like these ones are hard because we're here in Canada, where our health system is single payer, and when I read these stories, I still don't fully understand the mechanics of the U.S. healthcare system. But it sounds like this is another one of those sort of scammy, taking advantage of Medicare companies. At least that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, so effectively what's happening here is Clover Health is billing Medicare, and the software itself reportedly is poor quality, and it's effectively designed to upcode based on language put into the system by doctors and everything. The company actually pays $200 per appointment, which is double the going rate. So I think that's why Hindenburg initially looked into it. On top of that, there's some related party connections with the head of sales of the company and the head of sales of the company, as well as an associated firm that effectively directs patients to the system. It's messy. I mean, you can see it's off about 10% this morning. Again, Nate said he's not short, but it does. To me, it's a perfect example of the good work short sellers do, despite the name or the reputation that they have in the markets by a lot of retail that just doesn't seem to actually understand markets.
Yeah. Nate had it in the report too, how many founders shares Chamath got, which is really interesting part of this whole equation, right? Like, effectively, he creates a corporation and then he goes and he raises a ton of money at a higher valuation, and it's just a cash vehicle, and then he finds that qualifying transaction. So this like is a spotlight right on Chamath if all these allegations are correct, that he maybe didn't do all the diligence, and maybe he's spending too much time working on his upper body, certainly not on his legs, from what I'm reading, which was just like, I think that Chamath is like, he's going to end it's going to end in tears with this guy. Like, he thinks that he's basically God's gift to the investment community and retail investors. And just the fact that he tweeted out a picture of his body yesterday.
I didn't even see that.
You didn't see that? Oh,
no, I didn't.
Man, you're going to like this one. You didn't. This is great. Where is this?
To answer the question on the side there from Mark Martino, Bruce will be on at 12:30.
Yeah, look at this. This is Seamus. So this is a parody account, Dr. Parik Patel. This is the ideal male body. You may not like it, but this is what peak performance looks like. So Seamus responds with, "You're welcome."
Of course. Now, if I do recall, you had mentioned something about one of our staff writers having a comment on this.
Oh yeah, Braden wrote something, but I'm not going to go look for that live on air. But like, this is your billionaire of the people. When he's not raising billions of dollars for SPACs and blowing out his cheap paper into his retail audience, he's working out. Good on Seamus. I'm so confused by everything that's gone on over the last month. This whole billionaire for the people movement is
hilarious. I mean, come on. It's just like I said with the whole Robin Hood thing. You weren't sticking it to the man. All you did is make this guy money. He was publicly in at 118. You think he held on for the downfall? No, he was out at 200-300. Made a few million, I'm sure, on it, and away he goes. But don't worry, you guys stuck it to the man.
SPACs are the funny thing well, I don't know, it's funny, but SPACs remind me a lot of what happens in Vancouver, right? Like we get a lot of these deals that come across our desk where they're effectively just shells, and they're saying, "Hey guys, is there any way we could do a deal where you guys can cover us on the deep dive and write about us?" And then we because we are some of the only people who apparently go on CDR and read listing statements, prospectus, whatever you want to call it. And we quickly realized, okay, well, there's nothing on the balance sheet. There's no real meat on the bones here, and you're going to have this thing go out at a like $30-40 million valuation, and then you're going to try to make an acquisition. It reminds me of what happens in Vancouver in a sense, which like Seamus' business model.
Yeah, it's effectively the same thing. It's just a different market, right? Different market and different dollar amounts. There's a few zeros compared to the Vancouver gimmicks, but
he puts real cash on the balance sheet, though, and like you can do real things with real cash.
Oh, absolutely, right? I'm not saying every SPAC is bad. Look at Subversive Capital. That's a real business. You've got Jay-Z on the team.
And a lot of these SPACs do inevitably go out and buy real. Like when you have real cash, you can go buy real business. But I mean, I think that it's what I find interesting is this idea that I'm going to go on social media and act like I'm like this squeaky clean wheel when I have all this cheap paper that I'm then going to dump into my audience.
It's because if you build this persona, no one looks, right? That's why Nate's looking into it. I imagine there's going to be other looks into other SPACs that he owns. I mean, I think he owns like 3 or 4 SPACs, or maybe not owns, but you know what I mean.
Seamus is a little bit of an interesting case study on human psychology and taking advantage of like the ignorance of the general public, right? Like it's kind of, and I know I'm gonna piss a lot of people off with this comment, but it's like studying Donald Trump. Like to me, I think that I thought Donald Trump was a giant fraud like 15 years ago, right? But there's people who love this persona. They buy into this persona that he's just this incredible businessman who creates wealth and is cutthroat. And if they act like Donald, they can one day be like Donald, but they don't really understand all the stuff that Donald does behind the scenes. There's going to be university. There's certainly going to be university courses on this down the road, I'm sure. Just study
in terms of psychology. I'd be surprised if there wasn't already.
Yeah,
honestly,
this whole like image crafting, building up a persona that perhaps I should be doing that more with SmallCapSteve. Like both you and I are pretty humble. Like we take shots at each other and we know what we are. And the funny thing is, like, you're probably the best small cap writer in Canada, and people who actually know what they're talking about would generally agree with that. I have never once ever heard you refer to yourself as a journalist.
I'm not. I'm a blogger. Call it what it is, right? I mean, there's no need to. Well, first, I don't really care about titles, but you know what I mean, right? Like I do what I do, and if you like it, you like it. If you hate it, well, it's probably because I pissed you off at some point.
Yeah, but life would probably be better for us if we were, driving Lamborghinis covered in gold chains, talking about how we got the next big pick. And
I would disagree with that, but that's a philosophical argument that I'm sure you and I can have after, but I don't think people want to hear about it.
Some people buy into that. I think that they buy into the same way that people bought into Donald Trump. And heck, look at Chamath, man. Chamath, this guy's got major traction on social media, regardless of how you feel about him. And I think that there's
keep in mind a lot of that traction comes from being a cheerleader for Musk, though, right? He's a tech bro. That's why it is. He pushes. I don't follow him that closely, but I know he pushes Tesla. I wouldn't be surprised if he pushed stuff like Peloton, Beyond Meats, because it's good for climate change and all that type of stuff, right? Like, he's playing a role in the market, absolutely. He's built a persona around certain industries and how he does things. But at the end of the day, I always question how much these guys actually believe what they're saying and how much of it is just the classic used car salesman stick, right?
Yeah. I have to say, though, kudos to Nate. His writing is always fantastic. He's just a great storyteller. Every short report he does, he comes at us, with some pretty solid facts, and I always like the way that he puts together a narrative.
Sorry, you caught me off guard there. Nate is great. For a lot of people that we know, he rose to prominence with Afria, and it's just been hit after hit since then.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's take a look here at the news quickly before the Bruce man comes on. Control Technologies receives $2 million investment from Ontario government for BioCloud rollout.
This is one of two stories I really want to highlight this morning. So Control, this was put out 10:30 your time, Eastern. Ontario government's investing $2 million into their subsidiary, which has the Control BioCloud tech. You and I both have the same opinion on this technology and how applicable it is, but our opinions don't matter really. So they're getting $2 million from the government to push the commercialization of the unit, and that money's going to be put into production capacity effectively, with the company saying they can use that money to produce 20,000 units per month, which will be manufactured in London, Ontario, which is part of the reason that the Ontario government invested, as well as 85% of the components come from Ontario.
Mm-hmm. I don't have too many thoughts on this. I think that what's the stock doing this morning?
I'll be honest. My morning was so hectic, I haven't even looked at the stock.
It's at $4. It's at $4. 160 market cap.
The bottom of that article will say what it was right when it came out, because the company put the release out after Ontario, and Betting Bruiser had passed it to me ahead of that.
And here's Betting Bruiser's thoughts. KNR, poo emoji. I was promised 20 million sales a month. He's being cheeky. But I assume he's being tongue in cheek. But that's, what I found interesting about KNR, and it's something that whenever I talk to microcap CEOs, that they want to see a stock, get the traction that KNR got. You've got to have a big story to tell. They had a big story to tell. They had a very easy roadmap to say, we're going to set up so we have production so we can sell this amount. Look at demand. We know that we can sell this thing if we can build it. And you just saw retail investors just pour into it. They love the story. heck, the first time I was pitched it, I was like, "Oh, that sounds great." And then I talked to a few people who seem to understand this a lot smarter than me, and they understand this stuff a lot more. And they just kind of made me go, "Okay, yeah, it's not that big of it's not a slam dunk. It sounds like there are some challenges to it, but a $2 million investment does validate that they are doing real things, and we'll see." Where it ultimately goes, but it's still, I mean, $160 million market cap. They're gonna have to have some significant sales in order to justify this valuation.
Absolutely. I just get so hung up on this one solely on the basis of it's a $400 filter that needs to be replaced every time it does its job and detects COVID. So, I mean, what school can afford to replace a filter that frequently at that cost, right? Like, I come from the HVAC industry, and I know how schools struggle to replace filters literally like every 2 months, and that's on the furnace, which is environmental and it's related to health, right? Like, I'll be surprised if it actually works out. Like 20,000 units a month, that's great. Show me the sales.
Yeah, then that's been like, we're now into February, so if they're going to move or sell any significant product, you assume that these things aren't going to get installed until like April now. What does COVID look like in April? And I know that there's different viewpoints on where that's going to look with these new strains coming in. But my concern with any of these COVID plays is they're too late to the party, unless like you have some sort of vaccine idea, which is still probably too late to the party. Like, you got to be a big name to do anything in the vaccine space, I'd imagine. The testing stuff, there's certainly merit to that. I like the idea of data metrics, having people show up at your home to give you a test. I mean, I'd pay a couple $100 to do that if it meant that I didn't have to deal with any crap. But I don't know. Like, my take on this would be, the valuation is like, there's not a ton of meat on the bone for this stage of COVID, but look, forget about the merit to the technology of whether it works or whether it doesn't. Could they talk a government official into like a $200 million contract and the stock goes gangbusters?
Put it this way: it looks good for a government official to say we are investing in COVID-19 technology. Yeah. That's the core of it, right? I don't know that a government official would be concerned with how effective it works, but now Doug Ford or whoever in the Ontario government gets to go and say, we are investing in cutting edge technology in the fight against COVID. And that is worth more than $2 million to them by a long shot, right? Like, it's just how government works, right? So,
yeah,
I don't know that I'd classify it as a validation of the technology. I'd classify it as a validation of a government looking for talking points, and this was a cheap way to get it.
Yeah, This is a question from V Flynn 03. But in what kind of technology do you want to invest in? Simply put, anything that has a practical use that does work. And I'm not saying that isn't the case with KNR. I haven't thoroughly diligenced their technology.
I just don't see it as being overly practical, is my thing.
So it's kind of a good question. What kind of, like, if I was scanning names, what interests me? Right now, anything that can be applied, I think, in the environmentally friendly space. So any kind of green tech, to me, under a Biden presidency is very interesting, especially if you have something that looks like it can actually be sold. The reality is, though, that there's a lot of bad actors in this space. I mean, it's no secret that one of my favorite companies out there is Iguana Technologies, EGT.V, and now I see a whole bunch of different battery companies coming along that have significantly less than EGT that trade at significantly higher valuations. And it's like, it's challenging, man. Like, if you're a retail investor and you're trying to diligence these things, like, heck, KNR, like, we can't say anything because we don't have the ability to diligence it. Like, I'd suggest to you that if this technology worked at a very high, like, statistical significance, $400 per air filter, if that is the case, is like, they're going to catch some fish. Like, they're going to go and they're going to sell that to some governments because it makes sense. And also I'd add too, like, I got a buddy who's a teacher, and they're talking about basically going on strike because they don't want to have to. They feel unsafe with the new variants going into work every day. So I think that this is nice messaging. If that's all it is, just like how micro caps and stocks like to put out news releases, so does the government. It's optics, it's messaging, and it's a nice thing to send to their staff.
Even if you are not doing anything, you want to make it look like you're doing something.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's move on to something new. What else do we got here that I find kind of interesting?
The one I want to comment on. Oh, okay, we'll do that one. Red, White, and Bloom. So they secured $6.12 million via debenture financing. They will be using it to expand in Arizona as well as for Illinois. And non-convertible, 7% interest rate per annum. It's due in 1 year along with the interest. And I believe it comes from a single investor. Now, I will say that $1 million warrants were issued in connection with this at $1.20 per common share, which expire 2 years from the date of issuance. And there was fees of about $120,000 in connection with the financing. I do find it interesting that they went this route while so many operators right now are doing large bot deals, but that's their prerogative at the end of the day, right?
I from my perspective, and I don't know what it's like for the institutional investors out there, what they're able to see and how they evaluate the risk, right? Like they've got these options on these operators in Michigan that they tell us are generating significant revenue, significant EBITDA, and it all makes this company significantly undervalued. But I've learned my lesson, man. If it's not on a filing, I don't care. Like you could even put it in a news release. But if I don't see some accounting documents that show a fully consolidated income statement that shows me revenue, shows me gross margin, shows me operating expenses, heck, a cash flow statement. I want to see all these things to evaluate whether or not what I'm being told is real. Because like the Canadian regulators, I don't want to like shit on them or anything, but I don't know how much they're catching some of this stuff, because I've seen some news releases come out on some of the Michigan operators, and I mean I've driven around the state of Michigan looking at operators. At one point, we were looking at doing a private transaction, and I asked them about these numbers that because there was a flurry of companies who put out these projections on news releases for these Michigan operators, and it was the operators I spoke to in Michigan were like, no one's doing those numbers. So I want to see exactly what's happening on those financial statements before I make a judgment of whether or not I want to invest. And actually, we're going to have Bruce Linton on in a few minutes. I believe that he's involved with Gage. Isn't Gage largely involved in Michigan?
I think so offhand. I know in the case of Red, White, and Bloom, we had talked to the company, was it November, December? I don't even know. We do a lot of phone calls. And I believe that the holdup there is they're just waiting on regulators to approve the purchase effectively. And it's just an endless waiting game by the sounds of it. Now, I thought they had given a rough timeline of around now for things to close. However, with them doing a financing for $6.12 million in the manner that they did, I'd start to just generally be skeptical of when that closing is actually going to come, right? Because I mean, they could probably wait a week to do the financing if that deal is going to close.
Yeah. Okay. We have the great Bruce Linton joining us here. Bruce, can you hear us?
Yeah, I could hear the prior conversation. You couldn't hear me going, yeah, no shit, numbers are questionable anyhow.
What an entrance.
Yeah.
Well, the best thing about CanTrust is they almost nailed the name. Cannot trust would have been completely banged on, but they just missed by dropping a couple letters in that one.
We actually had one of our writers read Peter Acito's book, Weology, it was called, and do a book review on it. And you should see some of the quotes that Peter had.
And I don't even know, like, and guys, everything's changed there, so it's not a comment on now. It may be the best run company in the world now because it's kind of like getting on a Boeing that used to crash. I suspect it's the most trustworthy plane on the planet now because it's been so looked at. But when you looked at what they were doing before, it was just they presented themselves as such a highbrow thing. It was almost impossible to think they were doing it, and that's the best way to run that kind of scam. And I don't even know if Peter knew. Like when you join a marijuana company, you don't know if you haven't been in the space. When you get told, well, grow room 3 is licensed, grow zone 4 in the greenhouse isn't. You don't even know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he knew at the beginning. My gut is you always figure shit out. And then the question is, are you going to throw a flag? But it's very hard. Health Canada would always send everything at the close of business on a Friday, typically, for licensing to a handful of key people. So it's very clear to those key people when you get that, like it's a picture and a license. And so what I thought was really weird is I bet Health Canada would have loved if somebody would have bought the mess before they had to take all the licenses away. And if that commitment would have been, we're going to fire anybody who makes over 50 grand, because the senior people, we just don't know who's good or bad. And we're going to do this to the process of regulation. If you agree that we get to keep half our product and we get a penalty for 3 months, I think that thing could have been cleaned up like aisle 3 in a lot faster time. And Sundial, I bugged one of their investors. If I was running Sundial, I wouldn't have gone public at $17. I would have stopped the process, bought these guys, and tooled up. But anyhow.
Hey, careful. I'm a Sundial shareholder now.
Well, did you buy it at $17 when it went out, or did you buy it?
I bought it last week at 96 cents.
Right.
Here's my thesis. Let me walk you through my thesis. A lot of retail investors these days, they don't care about anything beyond share price. It's a NASDAQ listed company that trades, that all the Robinhooders have access to. It's a cannabis company, and it trades around $1. That's the thesis. And you're talking to a guy who loves looking at financial statements.
Well, and I would say that, it could be a good buy now. I'm not commenting on today. I'm commenting on how did $17 become $1? Now, could it become $17 again? Maybe. I don't look at the company particularly, but I do think you do have a lot of people that if you ask them, like, and I'd have people routinely calling me to say, why don't you do a stock split so you become like a cheaper stock? I like buying like $1 stocks.
Exactly.
And I said, well, like, you realize, like, if you take the price of the stock and you multiply it by the number of stocks, that equals something called market capitalization. And the total value of the enterprise should really be the principle you actually look at, not the price. Because I could actually make like a fractional penny stock. There would just be 1 trillion stocks outstanding. Would you like, is that a better company in your mind? And, usually if people are going there, it's a pretty tough conversation, but it's the same thing. If you do a reverse stock split, and I see a lot of these guys coming out of the funny business of Shells and Bay Street, where they start right away. And some of them I'm involved with cleaning up a little bit, where they start with 400 million shares and a market cap of $50. Mm-hmm. And, when you do a share consolidation, people feel terrible. When you do a positive share split, they feel happy, but it's like, you still own the same percentage. I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, that was Cannabis Wheaton back in the day, didn't they? Well, it was like a 6-cent stock or like a 4.5-cent stock, and they did a 3-to-1 forward split to make it 1.5 cents and 300 million out, which was And this is actually a really interesting conversation. I'm
being distracted because I'm reading all these things on the side while I'm blabbing, and so like part of what I was just on a call with another group for thinking about what do we do as a company to make certain moves. There's always moves to make, and I said, guys, I gotta go because I'm going to go on a place where they actually have a camera and an audience, and it's not TV. It's, another world. And I said, I got to go get my hats. And they're like, what do you mean you got to go get your hats? I said, well, if anybody goes on a program of this nature, broadcast or whatever, if they aren't selling shit, they're crazy. Get off the air, right? The whole reason I should be present is there are things I want people to know about. And if I inform them of things I want them to know about, indirectly, that is really selling. So like, I'm not accidentally wearing a MindMed hat. I basically am such a cheap son of a bitch. All I wear are t-shirts people give me for free. So I got my Gauge shirt on, and then I bring my stack of hats, right? Like I got my Gauge hat. I like that one. It's the first time in my life I can wear a reasonably close to flat brim hat and not look like some complete idiot. And it's because, well, you know what though, when you get a little of this going and your hair is really long and you're not as fat as you were, you can actually wear that hat. Yesterday, I guess you guys noticed, GW Pharma got a little bit eaten for $7 or $8 billion.
Yep.
Right. So that might be a little bit exciting for some of the stocks in the current cannabis market, but I think that one stands for Oskare, Oskare. And if you want to Google a site that I think has a future, Oskare Capital is something we started up about a year and a half ago, and we're funding up. It's not public, but it's intended, and we have over 400 targets we've invested in one, to look at Europe where science leads marketing. And I think that's important, right? America, marketing leads science. In Europe, science leads marketing. And so what we're trying to do is find all of the best companies where we can put early capital, formation capital, and it's about cannabinoids, endocannabinoid system. But GW Pharma getting eaten yesterday really started the phone ringing in that one. And that's a long play. I bugged Todd. So I have one of the world's ugliest hats. I said, like, Todd, what happened? Did somebody trap you in an alley and start attacking you with spray paint and shit? And like, usually this color of red, it should be reserved. This is the sort of red you reserve for fire trucks and food. But I wear this hat quite a lot, and I have a sweatshirt because I love Todd, and I know that we have a competition going on to look at our logo. Because like, I love when logos, the FedEx one where they hide stuff in and things like that. I love that. But like this one, if you look at the logo, all I can see is somebody who's pouting, like the downturned mouth, right? Can you see it? It's hard for me.
Oh yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
The furrowed brow they're going like, fuck. I said, like, did they just eat something that tasted bad? Why does that person look like that? He's like, now that you've shown me that, that's all I see. But the hat, the stock and Todd, I work with him in that one because you will never meet somebody who really wants to be a good person getting things done more than that. He is a good allocator of capital. He calls me and chases me on topics. If there's a bought deal going on, we're banging away on the topic. He is a very solid person, and I've known him for some time, and that's why I like him. So I have other ones in the stack, but my only point is, I hope everybody comes on your show actually recognizes that they have an agenda, and the objective is for you to see what we're working on and hope you like it.
Yeah, and you've obviously had just tremendous success here from MindMed to Field Trip to Canopy, and I'm sure Gauge is going to be a massive success too.
Well, you know what's hilarious? Even one that fired me, right? Like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. If you want me around, it's because you have a problem usually, right? Like if you get me as a public company and you call me and say, can you join our company now? We're a public company. If you're already a public company, you want me to come along, it's because typically you have a problem. That word starts with P. And then I use my 3 Ps. One is, first I look at what is our plan? Because clearly if we're not succeeding, our plan might not be super awesome. Second, I look at the people. Do we have too many? Do we have unqualified ones? Who gets to stay? Who has to go? And then the third thing I drive people nuts with is pace. Pace is not a hyperactive response to something. Pace is the ability to make more and better decisions than anybody else in the sector. So that comes down to things like data sets. It comes down to whole capacity to be more informed and make better decisions. And so on that theme, I just pound things all the time. So like one of the companies, I did a funding that closed on March 9th of last year. As you recall, that was not a super awesome window. Yeah. The guy, the product, instead of smoking a bong, I'll come back to this. Try Omura, Omura. Phenomenal pre-fill approach. Not smoking, heat not burn, super smart industrial designers that used to work for Japan Tobacco. They are doing a phenomenal product, and I would highly recommend it because it works, it's tidy, looks cool. Bongs, big mess, don't like.
So,
but so the guys that fired me, the reason I bring it up is even on those, if you put in what I put in at 77 cents, it's trading at like $4.50 now.
Yeah, we had Kyle Kingsley on our show actually a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you saw any of that.
I don't watch a lot. When somebody calls me and gives me a 30-second reason that I'm fired, I tend not to hang out and watch their stuff.
But here's what I found interesting, and this is kind of what I wanted to ask you about. Is I asked Kyle the early days of writing those checks. He was a doctor. All of a sudden, he tells his family and his friends and his community that he's going to get into cannabis. What it was like to raise those early checks, and he told us a great little anecdote. And he went to his small town expecting or hoping to raise $300,000. Everybody in his community in like rural Minnesota showed up, and they ended up raising, I think, $1 million that night at a town hall. And I was just like, man, Bruce must have some great anecdotes about the early days there at Tweed and raising money.
Hardest financing I ever did, though, was the one for Vireo last March. And the reason I say that is the world was crumbling. We could never get the price to quit dropping. So when you're trying to price, and that was a pipe, it was a private investment in public equity. It was myself and basically call it 10 other people, each writing a check. And so it was the hardest financing I did because we couldn't get the price to stop falling so I could actually price the thing and close. Second thing that was going on, hey kid, second thing that was going on was everybody started panicking and thinking they should just keep all their money. So I'm calling guys that like have made wax of dough with me, telling them I'm writing a check. You told me you're writing with me, write your check. And they're starting to tell me about, China's got this virus and it's in the US. And I'm like, yeah. And you know where your money is? It's in the bank. Write me your goddamn check. And like literally had to squeeze them by the neck. But once that was closed, it gave them cash to continue. And I liked the company because it was actually in geographically the right places. It wasn't hooked on California. It was in Pennsylvania. They sold that. But like a license in New York, to me, is like a lottery ticket that, they're going to keep drawing till you win. How long do you have to wait?
Mm-hmm. Here's a question I want to ask you about the transaction with Acreage. I assume that at Canopy, you were trying to figure out how to get U.S. exposure. You did the exchangeable warrant thing with TerraSend, which was brilliant. At the time, I was a shareholder in Ianthus. I remember emailing Hadley Ford being like, "Are you watching this?" And he had no idea what was going on. And I was like, "Why aren't we finding a Canadian operator to do an exchangeable warrant transaction with?" So how did the Acreage deal come about?
So you have to, if you're going to do a structured deal, you have to know where are the walls that I can't bang into. So you set out your boundaries. The first boundary is I do not wish to lose my NASDAQ NYSE listing, right? We were on NYSE at the time. So I can't do anything federally illegal. Okay. Which means I can't give money. I couldn't give any money to the company. Okay, well, does that mean I can't give money to the company's shareholders? No, you can do that. They're listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange. So I can buy the right to buy the company from the shareholders, but I can't do that directly with the company. Okay. Second thing is, if I want the company to be able to, if you want the company to be able to actually use your products, can I give them all of our technology for free? Yes, because you're not aiding and abetting a federal offense. If you're not making money from it, you're not giving it. So we basically could give them our tech, give them our brands, and do that deal. So that's why we had the thing was about $300 million cash to the shareholders in an exchangeable ratio, so that ultimately what we had was that, and the numbers aren't exact in my head, but I think they are, the deal was that what we bounded was that Acreage was effectively worth 17% of Canopy on the day we did that deal, because we had an exchange ratio that had a ratio of how much of us they got versus that. And everybody turns it into a dollar sign. I don't. You got to think about what percentage of the company will they own. Do you like that? And so that gave us a locked in path to get there. There were a number of ways that I would think I might have found to fund them, but it wasn't that terribly long after the transaction that I think my utility to the place was diminished and therefore I was gone. But there were a number of ways, as they have now funded Jason with TerraSend. And like the TerraSend started, when we started Canopy Rivers, Jason's the biggest shareholder, and we did a swap of TerraSend stock for Rivers stock and this options. And TerraSend's a great company. I still think Acreage has a very good shot. They just need to get, their cash back and go.
So it's safe to say at this point, Canopy's horse to get into the U.S. would be TerraSend?
Well, it's hard to say, right? They almost, it's like they have two horses.
Yeah. Well, you've still got, like, if these licenses are still selling for tremendous amounts of money, right? Like a Florida license, the last few deals we've seen with Florida operators have been in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So, and Acreage, I think, has as many flags in different states as anyone.
Yeah. No, I think Acreage is, to me, there's two things. I think they're the dark horse on potentially being a dominant player in the space, but they're also still bounded, and they're bounded as after I was out, I think the structure on how it was restructured essentially cut in half-ish the total proportion that could go to the Acreage shareholders of Canopy. So there's still an upper limit when that exchange occurs. And I don't track what the arbitrage is between the current market cap of Acreage and the current market cap of Canopy and try to guess, when will they switch in? Is there a bet to play there? I'm not actually I'm a very bad investor. I don't actually invest. I only go to things that I buy part-time jobs. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is I don't want to get a report at the end of the year. I want to go every Monday and talk about what's happening. Oh, people ask about Slang. I talked to the guys at Slang. Peter and Billy and I were on yesterday. They're kind of like they're a combination of things that has a lot of similarity with Todd and a bit more capital markets experience. But like, if you think about Slang, why do I like it? Well, they do the best where the world's really tough, where people are sophisticated and knowledgeable about cannabis, like say Colorado, Oregon. My view is that is the new normal coming to you soon, right? Like, you can still charge about 4 times as much a gram in some East Coast markets as you can in a highly competitive market. When the competition comes and the people get sophisticated and the differentiation is in the product, I think Slang ever more valuable to that whole proposition of bringing customers to your store who are loyal.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk. We're seeing a lot of capital flow into the small cap, micro cap tech names. I know that this is originally your background. You got Ruckify. Yeah. What's your thoughts on this? Or is Ruckify looking at going public anytime soon?
Yeah, so I got 2 tech plays. One that I'm working as hard as I can to make it go faster and think about, which is Martello. And nobody needs to send me another text or email about it because I'm pushing. That one enables people to actually work remotely without so much interruption on some of the platforms. It's done some good acquisitions. It's just, it's growing, and it just needs to get a little bit more out there, and then it should be better, like really get valued. Ruckify is a simple idea that is timely. We all own crap that's stored in our garages or basements, whether it's paddle boards, kayaks, canoes, rotor tillers, you name it. We own these things, and it ruins the planet to make them, and we hardly ever use them. So now there's a bunch of people with this evolving recession world, especially in the US, who are going to say, well, how do I monetize those things that I have? And there's a whole bunch of other people who say, I'd love to go paddleboarding, but I don't have like $500 to drop. And Ruckify allows the person with one to connect to the person who wants to use one on our app. Delivery can happen. The item's insured in case Buddy decides that he's like, 500 pounds and he wants to jump off a balcony onto your paddleboard. Paddleboard's dead, no problem. We'll fix it up. We'll give you an insurance coverage. But the whole matching economy for things to be shared to that level, I think makes a ton of sense. And so we did a structure with Apollo 3, which is a listed shell or a CPC on the TSXV. And we're working through what I think are the final steps to be listed. Goal is to be listed late this month, more likely to be early next month.
I think Jay's got a question.
Right. And questions. Yes, I still own shares in Canopy. I don't own nearly as much as I did at one time, but I still own quite a lot. And I, in fact, bought more when people said it was quite foolish to have done so at why would you buy more at 30 and then more at 20? Because I said, I think it's going to 50. Like, if I think I could do that, that was one of my few times where I actually was an investor.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing I want to ask about is SPACs. SPACs are a hot topic right now, and you are CEO of a SPAC that's listed. Is it NYSE or is it NASDAQ?
NASDAQ, yeah.
So what's going on there? What can we expect?
Well, so that one, I started it because I wanted to find a way to disrupt things like, how you use hemp to make a better fender for a car. I wanted to do a bunch of those things, and we looked at about 172 companies. There was a bunch of reasons we couldn't pull the trigger on the exact portfolio I want. So, this SPAC is formed and you can do whatever you want. The key thing is you must succeed. You must succeed. So through a combination of efforts, we found a LiDAR tech company, which is the supplier to, say, BMW and Magna, that allows cars to become truly driverless, not like a Tesla, but ones where you're actually, the car company will take the liability if you drive into something. And in the short term, Innoviz, which is a LiDAR company, can make cars still better than I think what you see with the technology inside of Elon's car for driverless. And so we did a transaction with them so that we expect sometime in March to have a meeting where it concludes that. And SPACs are going to dominate the world, and it's not because of the money that goes into a SPAC. So just so we're all on the same page, a SPAC is a special purpose acquisition company, and it's counterintuitive in every way. What the money does is it says, here's $150 million, report back to us what you do. And we get to say yes or no, but here's our money. So it goes into a bank account. That's kind of the opposite of what you usually get, right? You have to have a good idea to get money. Nope. You have to have some credibility to get money and then try and find a good idea. The $150 million, suppose I come back with an idea that they don't like, or the price of the SPAC is below the $10 unit price they pay, I have to give them back their cash. So suppose I was going to take your company, which is now private, public, and you thought there's $150 million in it. Well, if the guys take all their money back, or the ladies and guys, now we got no money. So SPAC is bad. But we wouldn't let that happen. So what you do is you raise what's called a PIPE, a private investment in public equity, on top of the money that's in the SPAC, and that money can't be revoked. So in the case of the one that we did, we had $150 million US SPAC. On top of it, we raised $230 million as a PIPE. So if and when the transaction closes, the target's guaranteed to have at least $230 million less fees in their bank account and be public. And the reason that will make SPACs popular is the funds that invest in the pipes, instead of getting told there's an IPO tonight and we're going to price it between $12 and $17 and you don't get to see the company much, and you have to place an order, when they put a pipe together, they can go in a data room for about 2 weeks. They can talk to management. They can do all their analysis and be sure they actually want to own that company. So it's a much better diligence process for the investors than the traditional IPO route, in my opinion.
So with the pipe financing, do you have to do like can the company opt to pay some of it back, or how are those typically structured?
The pipe stays there. So you better love this sucker, because when you put your money into a pipe, you are now going to be a shareholder when this transaction happens, even if the original SPAC investors all redeem their cash.
Okay, got it.
So now you can have in the term sheet, right, when you write this up, suppose I'm going to buy your private company. Really what I'm doing is letting you become public through me and you keep my cash. You can now write a term that says the minimum cash that has to be in for this transaction to happen could be 150 million. If I raise 230 million in a pipe, I check that box. And so that process is way more advantageous to all involved, in my opinion, than the historic IPO route.
Okay. I feel like there's a bunch of SPAC builders that should be deal makers that should be watching the show.
Well, but a lot of these guys, so that's how it's supposed to work. You can make a lot of money doing a SPAC, but really what you should be saying is, assume my cash, my at-risk capital. So if I do a SPAC, in order to do the SPAC, I have to put up the first, if I'm doing $150 million, I got to put up or find $5 million to start. And if all the things go sideways and that it all gets unraveled, I could end up with 0 out of my 5. So a lot of these guys don't want to take the risk, but they want to make the money. So they syndicate that out, keep a bunch of it. And they're not really aligned because they're not thinking with full risk. I like the full risk. Mm-hmm. So to the question, Innoviz, if you Google Innoviz was announced as our party for the SPAC. They're based out of Israel. Very, very impressive and intense, capable guys. Come from a very specialized engineering background group in the military. We had a lot of these together, and I went away more impressed every time just on how they conducted themselves.
I missed that announcement. I'll have to go back and look at that. I did not realize that Target had been announced.
Well, and here's how I explain it. A SPAC went out to get a hemp pizza, and it came back in a driverless car. And one of my guys phrased it that way, and I said, yeah, that's true. Now, BMW happens to make a car that's 21% made with hemp, and it's their highest end electric car. So what you always want to do is a transaction, and you hope that it creates some connective tissue for anything else you do in the future, and I feel pretty good about that.
So what advice would you have for retail investors who are primarily watching this? And, there's a whole bunch of psychedelic deals. There's a whole bunch of cannabis deals out there. They're trying to decide where to, take that extra money they put away, they put aside. They understand that they're investing in things that are risky. They're okay, accepting some risk. How there's like, I don't know, 50 psychedelic names now, hundreds of cannabis names. How would you like do you have any advice for how they sort of sift through which companies actually have upside and which ones don't?
Yeah. So to me, I do a couple things. One is if you're investing in the company, at least it has a chance of it has cash in it. Like I'm not everybody's going to get cashed up. So I do think, what the crews I've been involved with is raise now in case it goes poorly later in the world. Like I am using still a BlackBerry. Now that's because I did try the Google phone, but it couldn't handle what I like with the BlackBerry. The reason BlackBerry still exists and the company exists is when that company is highly valued, rather than buying everything, they raised tons of capital, put it in the bank. And then they found a way to keep going. What I think is key now for when I look at things, are they being thoughtful on their cash strategy? Second part is, to me, stop and think, like, suppose COVID actually ends or changes the music, and it's June or July of this year that this really starts catching on. What does that mean to your portfolio? Like, are you optimistic more fuel will be used in vehicles, or do you think not? Do you think like there's going to be M&A? You saw already a couple more transactions by Marriott. Like I'm starting to wonder a lot about the big theme. I think has got to be for everybody, carbon emissions and green. Like Biden's on that, got the world wondering about that. What do you have in your portfolio that says I have exposure to the trillions of dollars that are going to be spent or directed by governments on emission management? Like, what do you have in your portfolio? And I'm not invested in BlackBerry. I think I've used 17 BlackBerries in my life. I should have bought some of the goddamn stock.
It's a YOLO stock. It's a YOLO. You don't have any YOLO stocks in your portfolio?
No, and that one, my kid who's like into gaming was busting my ass about, Dad, GameStop and the Reddit guys and stuff. This is before it was in the news. I'm like, yeah, whatever. You're talking nonsense. I don't know what you're talking about. What? I got to listen to that kid more.
That's how I ended up in Sundial. Is I needed a YOLO stock, and I thought it was a funny way for me to troll Jay. So I bought a few shares, and it's actually pretty fun because like now whenever you tweet about it, you get like 10,000 impressions because everybody wants to look up the symbol and see what's going on. But Bruce,
somebody's bugging me to switch hats. They're texting me, "Hey, switch your hats." I'm like, "No, man. Thursday is not hair washing day.
The time we interviewed you with Cassandra, you actually had like a whole bunch of hats on a stick.
Oh, listen, you gotta. If you're on the screen, you're trying to sell stuff. So you need to make sure in this world, headshot's all there is. That's it.
Yeah. Well, Bruce, thanks so much for taking the time to come on here today. This was a lot of fun.
I love the fact you folks are like trying to fire it up and be entrepreneurial. I would say one of my primary things I'm going to spend the next couple of years on is how can we help people get to the point where they're making enough income on their own that they can actually start to wonder about stocks. So we have to start thinking about how do we help people increase their self-sufficiency in income generation. And I have a whole bunch of stuff that I'll be rolling out over the next year and two. And that's where I'm not going to just write a check to another hospital or something. I want to actually try to make something happen. Hey, look at betting's even listened. Right on. Hey, don't. But I don't leak my idea on how do we help people make their own money, because I think when we saw what they did with the COVID funding and people basically had a guaranteed minimum income, what did that do? It made all the restaurants busier that were open. It made the grocery stores busier because people could spend money they had for sure. And I want to get everybody to be able to increase their guaranteed in-pocket money because it's good for the economy. It's good for their self-worth. So stay tuned. That'll be my most involved activity for the maybe rest of my life.
Well, we'd love to have you back on anytime you want to come on and talk about small cap deal making or investing to our audience. It's a real treat that you've taken this time with us.
Well, see, all you had to do is think of two questions, and I talk so damn long. You guys could have had lunch while I carried the show.
We love it. We had Steve White from Harvest on, and he's a real like lawyer type. And
I know Steve.
And it was just every question he gave us like a very direct lawyer-like answer that there wasn't no anecdotes, no fun, and it was just sort of as straightforward as it could possibly be.
I love Steve, man. I don't know if he's still driving around like a Toyota Corolla and living in a crappy apartment behind the Walmart in Phoenix, but like the dude was sitting on a wallet about a mile thick and he didn't change a thing.
Yeah, those would have been great anecdotes.
Okay, be good, guys.
All right, well, thank you very much, Bruce.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, so Jay, let's wrap it up. What's going on the dive this afternoon?
Oh, on the dive this afternoon, we have Lobo Tigre, who is from, I'm going to mess this up, Investment Speculator, I believe it is.
Yeah.
And he's providing some insights on gold as well as commodities in general, stimulus. It's a great show, and it's actually one of my favorites.
The Independent Speculator.com.
Sorry, my apologies. I knew it wasn't right. The Independent Speculator. It's truly one of my favorite episodes we've done. I've watched it, and I'm actually going to go and watch it again. Just a great show. This afternoon, we also have some stuff from Hermina Paul go out. I know I've promised some stuff from Jim McFadden the last couple of days, but I've actually decided to hold it till the weekend because it is weekend quality content. And he does a great job on it, so I'll hold that off and I'll reveal what it is tomorrow. Excuse me. Outside of that, I believe I got something coming out from young Justin as soon as he sends it over. He got a late start because he was busting his butt on some schoolwork this morning, so got held up a bit, which is just all right. And
tomorrow on Small Cap Steve Live, we're going to have Brent Kachuba from SpotGamma.com, who's a really smart option trader, talks about using Gamma, which for us math nerds is the second derivative of the price. And it's going to be really interesting to sort of hear how he talks about using those derivatives to make predictions in what's going to happen in the stock market. So looking forward to that.
Yes.
Jay, what's the... Go ahead.
Sorry. One thing I will add is tomorrow's guest is entirely relevant given the events of the last week. And he was suggested by young Justin because Justin just loves that type of stuff.
We bought young Justin a webcam, by the way. We thought it'd be fun to have him on occasionally. And I think I don't know where he's been. I think he might just be too lazy to clean up his room. And,
Anyways, we're here for entertainment purposes only. What we say is opinion and just opinion, nothing else. Neither myself nor Steve have any financial licenses or designations. We're just two boobs that love small caps.
Hey, you stole my word.
I know I did. I had to steal it from you.
Well, it sounds like we're gonna have Frank Holmes on next week as well. That's gonna be fun. He's gonna be talking some crypto, and he's a hit with like our staff. I got to give them kudos. They just keep doing a great job bringing us great guests. And to our audience, you guys could have spent the last hour staring at any screen, any place in the world, doing anything, but you chose to spend it with this, and with this. And for that, I appreciate you. I hope you guys join us tomorrow and are having a great week, because we have a lot of fun doing this. I made a 90-episode commitment to Jay when I first started it. And I don't know, we're like 20 episodes in. So hopefully you guys are...
interrupt you there. Ben and Bruiser's telling me that you're doing a live stream tonight of doing yoga. Is that correct?
That is not correct. I'm not capable of doing yoga. I don't bend that way. I can do a live Taco Bell taste test if that's what you guys want. That's my
one last thing. Sorry. I just saw Jazzy J up there. Can you throw up a photo I sent you over WhatsApp yesterday?
Okay, well, hold on.
I know it's last minute, so it's going to take a second. Jazzy J has received his hat from Psyched Wellness. If you guys recall, one of our very first episodes, Jeff Stevens was on, CEO of Psyched Wellness, and he sent out some hats. Jazzy received his and sent me a photo, and I told him I'd do a shout out to him. So thank you, Jazzy. If you guys want to follow him, he's Jazzy Charts on Instagram.
Yeah, well, thanks for listening, Jazzy, and everybody else out there in Radio Land. Join us tomorrow, and enjoy the rest of your trading day, everybody.